And welcome back. You see at least one protester has come to offer prayers here at the Nebraska State Penitentiary. Those opposed and in favor of capital punishment in Nebraska brought here this morning where the state is prepared to carry out a death sentence. Within minutes, it's expected that Kerry Dean Moore will be executed for killing 2 Omaha men in 1979. Right now, sparse crowd, mostly media here right now because this again has been moved to to morning hours as opposed to the midnight hours. These people may be witness to history. I'm Rob McCartney.
I'm Julie Cornell. A very different scene than the other executions we've covered over our 26 years at KETV. The nighttime executions, sometimes chaotic, a little bit frightening, carnival atmosphere, very loud, and this is very different this morning.
Kerry Dean Moore has seen a lot of it over his years. He is the longest serving inmate on death row. It's expected he'll be put to death by lethal injection at 10 o'clock. This is file video Moore we have of him from one of his many court appearances over the past 4 decades. There is protocol in place to stop the execution process this morning should a court grant a last-minute stay or should something else surface that prevents the sentence from being carried out. But with each passing moment, that seems less and less likely.
Here again is a look at the state penitentiary, heavily guarded for blocks, Lincoln police at every corner. Not many protesters here at all. The grounds here in Southwest Lincoln are closed now. No one else will be let in. The public here is prevented from recording the prison. No photos can be taken. They've been subject to searches. They cannot bring in any signs with sticks or anything that might even be used as a weapon. They're even saying no umbrellas this morning. Now, while the case against Kerry Dean Moore spans 4 decades, the developments which led to this morning's execution, they span less than 2 years. It all happened pretty quickly towards the end here.
Right. In 2016, supporters of capital punishment delivered boxes of petitions to the state capitol. In November, then, voters put the death penalty back on the books. It had been just over a year since the Nebraska legislature had repealed it. And in January of 2017, Governor Pete Ricketts approved a new protocol to obtain lethal injection drugs. That gave the Director of Corrections, Scott Frakes, broader latitude in deciding which drugs can be used.
Well, this past January, the state informed Kerry Dean Moore that it had obtained the drugs necessary for his execution and would seek a date to carry out the sentence. In April, the timeline continues. Nebraska Attorney General Doug Peterson filed with the state Supreme Court seeking a new execution warrant for Moore. Peterson noted that Moore had no pending appeals, and that same month, the state denied Moore's request for a pardon.
In May, the state Supreme Court ordered a public legal office to represent Moore. Moore said he no longer wanted to challenge his execution, and the state's Attorney General urged the state Supreme Court to expedite the execution then, since one of Nebraska's lethal injection drugs expires at the end of this month in just 17 days. In June, Moore filed a motion seeking to dismiss his court-appointed attorney. Moore writing, "I do not want any further legal representation, and I do not want anyone to file anything on my behalf." State Supreme Court rejected Moore's motion without comment.
And then in July, the state Supreme Court issued Moore's execution warrant, setting the date for today, August 14th. Moore's court-appointed attorney said at Moore's request, he would not file any motions seeking to block the execution.
Now, the state will use a combination of 4 drugs to administer lethal injection to Moore.
Right, Nebraska has never disclosed how it obtained these drugs, but the Director of Corrections says this may be it because no one will sell any more drugs to Nebraska. No state has ever used this 4-drug cocktail before. The first drug that Moore will receive is diazepam. It's commonly known as Valium, and that will render him unconscious. And then he'll get the opioid pain medication that we've heard so much about, fentanyl. No state has ever used this drug as part of a lethal injection sentence. Then there's a 3rd drug in the sequence, Cisatrec curium bisylate. This will paralyze the muscles. Nebraska's supply of that drug, that expires at the end of October.
And finally, Moore then will get potassium chloride. That will stop his heart. State has until the end of August to use that before it expires. That's the one that's closest on the timeline here, and that's why the state pressed the Nebraska Supreme Court to set an execution date as early as last month. Now, how Nebraska obtained those drugs and the source of those drugs, that both remain a secret. Corrections Director Scott Frakes said disclosing any information about that might identify members of the execution team. And within the last week, 2 different drug makers filed appeals hoping to block the execution, saying the state may be using their drugs and they don't agree with that decision. The court, though, knocked down both of those appeals.
Now, obtaining those drugs for Nebraska has been very difficult. More than once, the state has either obtained drugs that could not be used, or they never got the drugs at all. In his first 100 days in office, Governor Pete Ricketts pledged to start carrying out capital punishment.
As part of our overall change in corrections, going to be able to execute criminals here in the state. That's part of what we're working on.
In 2015, the state paid a broker $54,000 to obtain sodium thiopental. The federal government told Nebraska it was illegal to import the drug from India, but the state persisted. More than a month after the warning, the feds intercepted the drug shipment headed for Nebraska. The governor abandoned the import effort and then tried and failed to get a refund.
Right now we're reviewing the purchase agreement, and we will have further conversations with the vendor.
With sodium thiopental almost impossible to obtain, the governor took a new approach by early 2017, announcing a new protocol for carrying out executions. It gives the director of corrections, Scott Frakes, a choice about which drugs to use. And by last fall, the state said it had a new supply of lethal injection drugs purchased in the U.S. The state declined to name the supplier. So it's been quite the effort to obtain those drugs. We want to check in now with David Earl, who's just literally hundreds of feet away from us in an area designated, surrounded by orange fence. David.
Yeah, Julie, we're on the proponent of the death penalty side of the area outside the state pen here that the State Patrol has set up for members of the public who wish to gather here today. I want to set the scene for you here right now. So again, we're on the side where folks would gather if they are proponents of the death penalty, or they're here today to offer support to the victims' families. There's no one here on our side right now. There are 5 members of the press. There are 2 law enforcement officers standing by, but there's no one here on this side, and it's been about 40 minutes, an hour and 40 minutes since the gates opened here for members of the public to arrive. Now, in between where we're standing and where the anti-death penalty folks are, there's room for state troopers, Lancaster County sheriffs. They're kind of in there to keep these 2 groups separated. And then you can see on the far side of that orange fence there, that's the anti-death penalty folks. A small number of folks have gathered there, speaking with reporters. You'll hear from them, of course, during this First News broadcast this morning. As far as what we've seen here, nothing, because no one is here on the pro-death penalty side, despite more than 60% of the voters in the state of Nebraska putting it back on the books and more than 140,000 signatures gathered by individuals to make it a vote for the people. Many of them are just going about their day today along Highway 2 and 13th Street outside the state pen here in Lincoln. There's a considerable law enforcement presence. They've kind of roped off the entire area around this whole state pen complex. But people are driving by, school buses are going and taking students to where they're going or running their routes ahead of the first day of school. But as far as anybody here on the pro-death penalty side, no one yet, as we're about 20 minutes away from the execution of Carrie Dean Moore. Guys, back to you.
Hi, David, thanks. So there's only very few people, if any, on the proponent side. There's just a handful of people on the opponent side, and Camilla Ortiz is with them. Camilla.
Yeah, and Rob, I would guess there are probably about a half dozen death penalty opponents here right now. We've seen a few more people trickle in as those minutes tick by and we approach that scheduled execution time, but it's still very quiet here. Some people were talking to me that were here back for those executions that happened in the 90s, and they said this is completely different, a very solemn environment here. Some of the people that are here are holding signs. I know that gentleman in the background, you can see him behind me. He was kneeled in prayer earlier. We showed you that. So everything is very quiet. People are here for different reasons. Some people are here for religious reasons. There's a group called Nebraskans for Alternatives to the Death Penalty that is represented here today. Lots of independent people here as well that just decided to drive up and make their voices heard. So I'm going to bring one of those people in right now. This is Diane Reyes. You are here independently. Why did you think it was important to come here today?
Because I feel that it's important to stop killing of other people. Killing with execution is no different than him killing those 2 cab drivers. What makes us think that that's any better? The other thing is the Bible says an eye for an eye in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Well, first of all, let me go back to the Old Testament. What that really meant was for more minor infractions, not for anything like murder. But in the New Testament, Jesus says that's all abolished, and he says, "Revenge is mine," says the Lord. My understanding is Governor Pete Ricketts, he is also a Catholic, and I believe Mr. Doug Peterson might be as well, our Attorney General. So you don't pick and choose from the Bible what you're going to follow. Another thing is, it is not equal. Those with money, they get off. Those without, they don't. I'm also going to add, additionally, those of color do not. Those that are white do get off, again, with money. My understanding was it was well over 58% of the Nebraskans voted against the death penalty at the last election. And my understanding is Mr. Pete Ricketts had a referendum that he pushed through because he has lots and lots of money to push that through. Okay, if that was voted no death penalty, why do we still have it? These drug makers, they said they explicably in their write-ups, they said that the drugs were not supposed to be used for capital punishment. So these are not proven. We don't know what it's going to do to the inmate. We have no right to torture anybody. And so these were not even made for that purpose. Another thing I noticed too, 10 o'clock in the morning on a school day and on a work day, when everybody else has to be in school, the children have to, or the parents have to get to work. So nobody can even babysit your children because you don't want them to be here and have to explain to them, what is going on? Why are we here? That's too hard for their little minds to understand. We're trying to keep somebody from killing that already killed. That just don't even make sense to them. I'll let you ask some questions.
No, that was great. Diane, thank you very much. So for you, it's really just a moral killing is killing.
Killing is killing. It doesn't matter if it's abortion or if it's executions. Life. Oh, another thing, they have proven that life without parole is cheaper than the death penalty. They've also proven that there's no deterrent with the death penalty, and I went blank on the other part.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. So there you go. There are some of the views. That is why some of these people are here today. Again, not very much happening. There is a group gathering here with signs. I don't know if we can show you this, but we will continue to stay posted here on the opponent side. For now, we will send it back to you, Rob and Julie.
Camilla, thanks. And you mentioned the religious opposition to this. We see a priest not far away from us who is attending here, watching, and also there was a petition that was sent to the governor, 60,000 signatures. The Catholic Church said that they had received, trying to urge Ricketts to stop this execution.
Right, delivering those just this week. Well, there are those who have been close to Carrie Dean Moore from throughout. KETV Newswatch 7's Andrew Ozaki reports on one woman who considers the condemned killer a friend.
Lisa Knopp has known Carrie Dean Moore for 23 years. Now she and others stand in front of the governor's mansion almost every noon hour protesting Moore's scheduled execution.
I am opposed to the death penalty because I'm a Christian.
She says that's how she met the state's longest-serving death row inmate. She helped him find a new pastor, and they became pen pals.
The letters were just so warm and personal that 23 years later, we're still writing.
She knows Moore as a thoughtful, generous soul, not the person who robbed and shot 2 Omaha cab drivers, Ruel Van Ness and Maynard Helgelin, 39 years ago.
When I read about or speak with him about the person he used to be, I cannot reconcile it. He is such a changed person. The whole time I've known him, he's expressed great regret and concern for the families, the children of the victims.
Knopp won't say much about why Moore refuses to fight his execution, other than to say he's prepared to die.
He is worn down and worn out.
She says he's been scheduled to die 6 times before. Twice he came within a week of being executed.
He's exhausted by the whole process of having to prepare for death and then being called back from that.
Knopp does not know where she'll be the morning of the scheduled execution. Moore has asked his supporters not to be at the state penitentiary.
I don't think I'll want to be sitting at home. I think I would want to be with people like this.
In Lincoln, Andrew Ozaki, KETV, Newswatch 7.
Yeah, two families have waited decades for this day, among them the sons of one of Moore's victims. KETV News Watch 7's Taylor Barth spoke with them just yesterday, hours before getting the closure they've hoped for.
39 years, 7 failed executions, and 1 man at the center of it all.
When Mr. Moore is back in the news and it's another stay or another execution date, it makes us think about what happened and how it happened and why it happened.
Steve and Kenny Helgeland are the sons of Maynard Helgeland, one of Carrie Dean Moore's 2 victims.
Our father's dead for one simple reason, and that is Mr. Moore wanted to kill somebody.
Kenny Helgeland shared a cab with his dad. They drove together every weekend, except for that fateful day Moore called Happy Cab 63.
If I was with him that day, I wouldn't have been here today to see you.
Steve Helgeland was just 13 years old at the time of his dad's death. His memories are few.
Unfortunately, Mr. Moore cut that a little short, and we didn't have an opportunity to hear a lot of the stories or get a chance to talk to him or share some of those things.
Yet they still remember their father and want others to as well, as his killer prepares to die.
We're not here to dance on Mr. Moore's grave or anything like that. We're here for Mr. Van Ness and my dad. Simple as that.
They say it's justice and, in a sense, closure, a feeling they've waited patiently for.
It'll at least close the book and we won't have to hear about Mr. Moore anymore, although I think his story will continue to echo in the history books as the longest serving inmate on death row.
While Moore may leave the headlines, what he did will always weigh on these 2 sons' hearts.
It's always going to ring in my mind what happened. It's never going to go away, that bell.
Corrections has been very organized and controlling about how things are said and released this morning. There's some new details about what's going to happen this morning and in what order. We check in now with John Oakey. He's in the studio. John.
Well, Julie, getting more information from inside the state penitentiary. KETV News Watch 7's Chin Doan reports that the communications director just briefed the media and said that they will release the names of the non-media witnesses at the scheduled execution. They're also not given a timeline and will not detail the security status at the prison or whether or not it is on lockdown. Also into the newsroom, Nebraska Democratic Party Chair Jane Cleave releasing a statement ahead of the execution saying, quote, Governor Ricketts proclaimed Nebraska as a pro-life state this year. And today, he uses a drug cocktail never used before to kill an inmate. Against the wishes of the Pope, Catholic bishops, and the legislature, Ricketts used millions of his own money for revenge. Still ahead, a look at the evolution of the death penalty in Nebraska and how it's changed over the decades. This is a special edition of KETV News Watch 7 First News.